No one can enter the last museum. It hovers ominously over the shadowed plains, slowly drifting automatically to suitable climates. The pale light of day morphs across the sloped metal surface into amoebic reflected forms. A patina of platinum protects the massive structure, obscuring any potential ingress or egress, featureless. A hermetic system, relying solely on the coordinates of memory, casting its wide shadow over the ruins of old museums, crumbling architecture and waste in its perfect anonymous silence. There are no patrons to attend the last museum, no galas, no lectures, no docents, no members, no curators, no gift shop. Inside is just a growing collection, a database, collected by an army of drones, physical and digital, a patchwork collage of curated incomplete memory of everything, and everything within it is fragile. Every artifact preserved for a future viewer who no one is sure if they exist. If they do, they will not disrupt the perfect balance of humidity and filtration. The audience of its potential era could be the very destroyer of the archive that it feared. Their very presence, their very breath was of decay, and on their skin, they bore destruction. So, the doors remained sealed and the numerous vitrines hooded in the dim low 50 lux luminance until an unseen future manifested itself. In the labyrinth of labs, Dr. Moritz found her balance within the cold and sterile air. Silent robots attended her needs, gliding across the disinfected white antimicrobial marble floor. Inside the glove box, where the air hummed within the seal, she turned the gorgeously encrusted object in the thick white gloves, barely feeling its contours in her own hand. The astrology and mythology of the form only reinforced her verbal notations on the provenance within the Deccan of the Dead Age being recorded by the machines for posterity. Each facet of iridescent crystallized artifact fragmented the bright pure white light of the box, and within each etched surface of the form, the survival of this antiquity surged. It enforced its own sense of being an artifact, corroded into time from its origins as a household item from a time there were houses. The lab extended far, with further devices for capturing in a grid of research in a lab without walls. Dr. Moritz placed the beautiful object, a ceramic flower, onto a tungsten caliper which allowed it to be seen by the unblinking eye of the watchful 3D scanner as it passed its passive LiDAR beams across the fragile surface, touching, but not touching. On the screen of electroluminescent dots she could see the form come together in its point cloud, gathering the object from nothing. Each layer it captured was a prehumus life, glowing first bright green and then migrating like the ancient gods of data across the screen, gathering into an orbital view of the piece. Dr. Moritz shifted the underside to get the view anew. The point cloud gathered in complexity before the eruption of the data. Within her gloves the form disintegrated, each piece decaying, flaking off to the bottom of the box. The buzzing androids beside and behind her stopped the work, their silver anthropomorphic faces silent, observing her every thought. Dr. Moritz panicked, reaching for the shards in a futile effort to save the vehicle of traditions. Each shard further flaked, dissolving into the perfect air. She looked at the stalled faces, the frozen pharaoh arms, all paused for her error. "It's okay," she said calmly. The scan on the screen displayed the misaligned points, tracked their descent to the bottom of the box and further decay into a static of scrambled dots. "We have the data." With that they seemed to settle back to their routines and stopped staring. Dr. Moritz saved the smeared file. Below the aluminum floor of the box a door opened and a new artifact emerged, this one a domestic object of wood and silicon. Cursing, she placed what was left of the damaged artifact back into the opening and removed the new object. It too absorbed her fingerprints through the thick protective gloves onto its ancient surface before feathering and breaking its brittle skein. An alarm rang within the laboratory. She set the object on the tungsten calipers, allowing the scanner to run again. With each digital caress the object lost most of itself. Windows opened on the screen, warning her of the fragility of the piece and the impossibility of its saving. She removed her hands into the cold air and tapped away each warning. The lab fell silent again, the robotic movements halted. She looked at the other machines as they analyzed her face, her movements. She felt naked in their gaze. "There has to be an explanation," she reassured them, pausing the scan, its point cloud an abstract jumble of glitched noise. The object disintegrated. She flipped through the atmospheric composition, but everything was more than perfect. Air pressure, perfect. Lighting, perfect. Behind her, one of the maintenance machines came to her side and began reading the box, checking the data that she had just checked. A new object emerged, a fragment of a shopping cart, rusted from the waters of the Mississippi River, and immediately began its decay from the opening. The robot paused, bowing its gleaming yellow head before the box as if it shared in her feeling of failure. Dr. Moritz plunged her hands back into her gloves, shaking free the dust of rust. And then it vanished, leaving a vapor of points on the screen. Nothing. A supervisor came behind her and, using its soft padded multi-fingered extremity, gently squeezed her shoulder. I can override the system. It may need some maintenance before we continue, it said in its soft voice, designed to sound like her. Okay, good idea. Dr. Moritz replied, backing away, thinking of the millions of objects left to document, a lifetime of work she had devoted to oversee. Multiple lifetimes of work. She turned to the supervisor as it hovered on the pristine lab floor and cupped her bare hand to its shiny face in a gesture of gratitude. The robot shuddered below her touch as its clean and polished features rusted right before her. Bright lesions of silver decay spread across every part, opening wounds of wires and circuitry. In minutes the supervisor was dust and the lab silent again, but this time with warning. Each robot stalled, staring, some retreated from the floor. Dr. Moritz fled through the museum, and in her wake everything disintegrated. Every rake, every no smoking sign, every window, every ornament, every spacesuit, every tool, every computer, every robot, every record, every skeleton, every hard drive, every file, every scan, every artifact decayed, rusted, vaporized. The robots tried to stop her procession through the museum, but they too fell and vanished. In every space she entered, dissolution arrived upon her entrance. Every artifact that was revealed, and every one after that, exposed to her presence, began their immediate decay. Until all that remained was the shell of the last museum falling to the corrupted earth as its walls dissolved, and the memory of this world, and what it was, and how it would be remembered, finally fell away.